Hey there. So I did a read, like a longer read on this particular energy as I was picking up on it, um, already. And like I completed it, I filmed it, and I got the message. It was like, don't post that. Don't post that one. I don't know why. I am, haven't really gotten that. Like there, I was like, well, is there a mistake in it? Like, what is with this? And they're like, no, it's not right yet. So I was waiting to see if there was a right time to post it, and instead just got told to, like, read the energy again. So I don't know if there's something about this that is shifting over time, or, like, shifting rather quickly. But it does sort of seem to be the case. Another thing that I noticed was... Now I'm doing it again. Is both times that like I've read this energy, it's like I keep getting distracted with things like, oh, there's like a little speck of dirt on my cards. I need to clean that up. Which normally is not like my focus when I'm reading on camera. But it's like both times there's almost this like meticulous edge to it. This may be someone who is a little bit tuned into the details, and or like, I don't want to say like a clean freak, but maybe someone who is a little bit more meticulous about like their cleanliness, their environment. This does feel like kind of a connection read, and obviously love can take a lot of different forms. Platonic, romantic, familial. So, like, take it how it resonates, but I'll start with some of these, like, animal spirit oracle cards, then get some tarot to kind of, like, confirm and expound, and see what we got going on here. The first three animal oracle we have is snake, gazelle, and bat. And the snake, to me, kind of feels like confirmation that, maybe the reason that I wasn't supposed to post the other video that I did was not because it was wrong, but just because there's been like this like transformation process, like the snake shedding its skin in a sense, and I think that may have to do with this person moving into a state where they feel lighter and more comfortable, like, navigating certain situations. Because, like, I'm kind of, like, seeing this as almost them shifting in between, like, this energy of gazelle and this energy of, like, bat here. Because, like, gazelle, it's a very graceful animal, but that's also, like, very distinctly a prey animal. Very distinctly an animal that's always going to be aware of its surroundings, always, potentially jumping, fleeing at the first sign of danger. Whereas, bat is a creature that's known for being able to echolocate and confidently maneuver in the dark. I was like, is this reversed, or am I just holding the deck upside? I did that the last reading, too. I feel like there's something about like this person or this situation, like maybe getting turned around easily. Yeah, either that's like a little like dyslexic vibe, or like a little bit bad sense of direction. But there's like something here about that. That's so funny. I can't remember the last time that's happened, but it's both times that I read this energy, I ended up holding the deck upside down. We've got the Hermit here, which tells me that like this transformation process, I think, has been like a part of like a larger internal journey, potentially one that was expedited by you. Yeah, we got the Nine of Voices, which would be the Nine of Swords by Gazelle, which kind of like confirms what I was saying, that there was some fear, there was some anxiety, and I think that we're almost like in this state of perpetual motion, like always having to keep running, always having to keep moving. and maybe playing it off as like a little bit of like grace with Gazelle. Like, it's not like someone who is coming across like super like hectic or frantic. You know, it's someone who does have a more polished exterior or graceful way of moving, but I think that there was some underlying fear in the why. There is some underlying fear of being vulnerable at the watering hole, so to speak. Oh, I got a big old chunk of cards here. I got the Tower, the Wheel, Strength, the Moon, the Sun, Eight of Wands. Jesus. I think you make this person feel things. It's just like, that is like such a like big heavy hitting chunk of like major arcana cards, like the emotional ups and downs that you bring about in this person, that sometimes they feel like it's like they're honing this sense of like internal precision. They're honing this sense of like control, and it's not even that like you're doing anything that is like particularly dramatic or intense, or like, I'm not talking about someone who you have like this huge off and on with big fights, because a lot of this with that Hermit is happening internally with this person. A lot of this is internally. Like, they are not projecting this onto you. I'm not talking about someone who's like blowing up at you. I'm not talking about someone who's like off and on every week. This is someone who is holding like a very large amount of energy and energetic shifts that I feel like are very connected to you. It almost feels like it's like playing out with this story, like a story here, where it's kind of like this Eight of Wands is like just the overall, like, the energy is here. The energy is moving. We are moving through the energy, and it kind of starts with you breaking down the fear, I think, that this person had on some level of like showing up as themselves, or of like navigating things in the way that they would want, you know, because like that's the thing about bat is, you know, not every bat is a vampire bat or this bat or that, but like most bats are to some degree hunters, even if they're just hunting like, you know, small bugs, whatever, in the dark. But even those that aren't, like, they have a lot of grace to them, but it's different than, you know, the Gazelle that is like this hypervigilance, this I can't rest at the watering hole, whereas like the bat is more of like this like free flying in the dark. And I think that this person likes that. I feel like this person enjoys that, but they had so much fear before, and you broke something down in terms of like allowing them to feel safe. And I think like with this Tower and the Wheel, it's like next now I'm hearing like that line from the song, like, you know, you came in like a wrecking ball, came in like a wrecking wheel of fortune, I guess. But it's like this sense of, it would have scared them if it didn't feel so synchronistic, if it didn't feel so magic, if it didn't feel so divinely aligned. You know, it's almost like there is this sense of intensity to it, but like this person has like this sense of, oh, like almost unspoken trust in the universe that kind of like lets them navigate the uncertain or overly like intense parts of it. With this like Strength in the Moon being our next like pairing here. And I think that there's something about like this may have even been something that forced them to confront some of those things that were sort of behind the wall, that they were always perpetually moving away from, even if they were moving gracefully, even if they were moving effectively. And I do like in both of these cards, like there is a moon here. It's just in one version we're looking up to it, and in the other one it's kind of like framing her. You know, it's kind of like getting into this person, like their own subconscious, their own energy here, their own like sense of self, and like confronting that in a way that like they're not afraid of. You know, it's kind of like you unintentionally take this person through the full spectrum of their emotions, including the ones that they were afraid to feel, that they were afraid to embrace, and you help them to realize that like that's actually kind of fun. You know, it's like the bat kind of like enjoying, like swooping around in the dark, echolocating through all of that. Because I mean, in this bat card, there's another moon there. There's another moon there, and there's something about like this person enjoying that. Because again, it's not coming from like a toxic place. It's just coming from a, you make them feel deeply. You make them feel deeply. Not because you're toxic, not because it's afraid of losing anything, just because there is like spiritual depth to this relationship, to this connection, to the way that you two show up for each other. And like with the Sun and the Eight of Wands being our kind of like final like pairing here, it's like you've brought that side of this person to light, and now it's like, now they've learned they can be the bat, they can fly, they can do all of this. It's like there's no going back from that. Like they are very much excited about like moving with this energy, about further embracing it. And I do kind of like that, like we started with this Hermit that's over here in the desert, but if you look at like this like Eight of Wands here, it's like a similar desert energy, but it's much less desolate in terms of this person sort of showing up, you know, initially like kneeling, looking a little bit like far off, with the Sun kind of in the background. Now we've got like the Sun in the forefront and this person in motion. It's like you kicked off some motion in their internal world. You inspired them to move through those shifts, to move through those energies, to enjoy that. Very interesting. So I feel like that's almost like a what happened from the previous reading. But like nobody's even seen the previous reading that I keep referencing, so maybe I'll end up posting it anyways as like a part one. I don't know. But I do want to know, just like in general, how are they seeing you? How are they feeling? What can we learn about this person? So I had a few other cards that like kind of came out a little separate in this Animal Spirit Oracle initially. And that would be Camel and Tarantula. So we're going to expand on this energy a little bit. See what's going on. The Emperor, the Four of Swords, the Six of Cups, Six of Pentacles, Five of Pentacles, Seven of Cups, Two of Pentacles. This is such an interesting range. You know, and I feel like that's kind of like how they feel about you too. You know, there's this sense, with Camel, I think it's interesting that like we were talking about like all of this imagery about like the internal world or landscape or things that they've been through being like a little bit desolate, a little bit like a desert at times. And it's like then they see you as Camel. It's almost like they see you as someone who has learned to adapt and survive in like similar circumstances to maybe something that like they felt like was unique to them, or, you know, something that they were struggling to deal with. And I think that like there is this sense of respect there for the way that like you subsist through those difficult periods, those periods that like they may even themselves like struggle to move through. And I think that there's also something like with the tarantula, the thing that keeps coming to mind is how like people who are scared of spiders are gonna get pretty freaked out if they like saw a tarantula. But like if you know, I guess, much about that, and you don't have, like, a severe arachnophobia, it's like, most tarantulas, like a pet tarantula someone has, it's not harmful. It's just, like, something that, like, some people look at and maybe misjudge as, like, dangerous, and you're gonna be more in danger from, like, you know, a small black widow spider or something than, like, a tarantula. But the tarantula, for some reason, there's, like, a visual intimidation factor. And so I feel like there is a sense of, like, you maybe having something about you that they admire, that some people might find intimidating. And that could be, like, in the way that you present yourself visually, or, you know, the way that you show up, or the way that you, like, even structure your life. You know, because down here we've got the Emperor, the Four of Swords, and the Six of Cups. This kind of feels like the first, like, part of this that it's like the way that you almost, like, prioritize your peace. It's like, given the choice, it's not even a matter of, like, oh, you were put out in the desert and you had to become the camel to survive. Maybe in some cases, but I think in some cases it's like you were given the choice and you're like, I choose the desert. I'll figure out how to be a camel. Like, I would prefer that to dealing with people that are not seeing me, they're not respecting me, people that are misjudging me. You know, it's like, if you're gonna look at me and, like, scream because it's a tarantula and you're gonna try and kill it when I haven't done anything to you, fuck it. Like, I'll go off into the desert, and I'll make it my bitch. It's kind of funny the way that that's coming through. But, like, there very much is, like, this energy of, like, them seeing you as someone who, even when it's like you're taking a step back or you're doing nothing, it's like you are still in this Emperor energy. You are still in this, like, empowered vibe of protecting yourself, protecting your peace, even when that's, like, protecting it by doing nothing. Kind of a sense, and, like, that you historically, like, have been that person. And I think that there's, like, a respect there for that. There's, like, a respect there that they're not viewing any of the situations that you've disconnected from as, like, failures. It's like they see you as the Emperor through all of that. It's just, like, a matter of almost, like, whether or not you feel like it's worth it to engage. Which is kind of interesting. And then we got, like, the Six of Pentacles and the Five of Pentacles, which is, I feel like they also see you as someone who is, like, very generous and giving, like, regardless of your situation, regardless of your struggles. And I think that they do recognize, like, the areas in which you struggle, that you are insecure, where you don't necessarily have quite as much, and it's like they want to like, give that energy back to you, because it's like they see that that's the way that you show up, and they want to show up for you in that way. I think with the Seven of Cups and the Two of Pentacles here, it's almost like you bring up so much in them, and there's a lot that they want with you, from you, through you, that it's like sometimes it's like they gotta hold themselves back a little bit, because it's like they don't want to come across in the wrong way. I think that, like I said, with a lot of, like, these big emotional shifts being, like, internally based, I think that there is very much a sense of, like, awareness with this person, which that might also be, like, some of the things that I was noticing, like, every time I tap into this energy, I'm, like, focusing on, like, the little details, like, oh, there's like a speck of dirt here, there's, you know, it's someone who is very aware of not wanting to disrupt your life, or not wanting to give the wrong impression, to the point that sometimes, you know, they internalize the biggest of shifts. And I think in some cases prioritize showing up, like, physically, whether that is, like, financial support or like practical support, or this does feel like someone who, if you looked at them, you could like describe their love language as like acts of service type of thing, as opposed to like words of affirmation or whatever else. This feels like someone who's Three of Cups, first and foremost, like doing their best to be a good friend to you. Interesting. Doing their best to be a good friend to you. And this could be because it's a friendship connection, but it also could be that this is like a romantic partner or potential romantic partner, but wherever they're coming from, it's like prioritizing that like friendship first. 9 of Wands, the Lovers. So I feel like for those who like this is a romantic connection for, in some ways it feels like they holding themselves back a little bit in terms of expressing the intensity of it. And I think specifically the feeling of like how long they've waited for someone like you, like someone who meets them where they are and allows them to safely exist and move through that emotional range, that intensity, that whatever. Like there's this feeling of them sort of like being their own best friend in a way, being their own best friend, and they look at you and it's like either that person like now is my best friend, or like that person could be my best friend, or that person is as good a friend to me as I am to myself. And I think that that's not something that this person encounters often. And I think that that's something that they, like, genuinely love. That is something that they genuinely have hoped for a very long time. For a very long time. 7 of Swords and 7 of Pentacles. I think that it was hard for this person to keep moving, but a lot of like what kept them moving was the idea of like one day something like being real, and I think that there was a part of them that kind of said that it would be something that they either couldn't have or something that was much further down the road. Like they had to achieve like this level of financial stability, or like this level of career development, or this, like whatever it was, they told themselves something that, they had to do, they had to achieve, they had to, whatever. And I think that they were unprepared for this coming in the way that it did, with the intensity that it did, not in a bad way, but just, I think that they didn't realize that on some level they were lying to themselves when they said, I have to have XYZ before I'm ready for this, before I deserve this. But like the 4 of Wands, it's already here. It's already here. It's already here. Queen of Pentacles, Knight of Swords, 10 of Swords, 8 of Swords. I think it's just a matter of both of you deciding that you feel like you deserve it. That you feel like you deserve it in spite of how you feel about yourself, in spite of how other situations have gone, in spite of whatever communication or nurturing the situation needs to survive. It's like this sense of something that's so good that, like, you're afraid to hold it because you don't want to break it. And I think, like, that's like the real, if I were to say, like, risk to this connection, because this feels like a very positive connection, very good vibes overall. I would say, like, the only risk is, like, being so afraid of losing it, of breaking it, of whatever, that, like, you never fully embrace it. And there's something to be said for caution. There's something to be said for wisdom. There's something to be said for patience. But there's also something to be said as far as, to have loved and lost is better than to have never loved at all. And I think in this case, you're not necessarily going to love and lose. It's almost like you'd only lose if you don't love, if you don't accept that. So it's like you can't lose as long as you embrace it, as long as, like, you allow it, as long as you open to it. It's there. It's there, and I don't think it's gonna stop being there. Yeah. Seven of Wands, a little bit of resistance, but Nine of Cups, the Magician, Knight of Pentacles, the things that are meant for you aren't going to pass you by. I mean, that's really, like, what this is saying is that, the only way that you would miss out on this is if you choose not to play. If you decide permanently and forever to opt out, which you can do, because, like, free will. We can do whatever the fuck we want. But it's like, even if what you decide is you want to move very slowly, or, you only want this much right now, or, like, whatever else. It's like they're giving me the image of, like, a cake, and you're eating a cake, and normally, you want to eat a cake by a certain amount of time, or it's probably going to go bad, as food does. But it's like, in this image they're giving me, it's like they're telling me, they're like, it's a cake that doesn't go bad. That's so specific, but, maybe to someone, like, there's this sense of, like, there's a whole cake, and it's for you, and it doesn't go bad, so you can eat it at your pace. The only way that you're going to miss out on the cake, that you're not going to eat the cake, is if you don't eat the cake. It doesn't matter if you eat the cake slow. It doesn't matter if you eat the cake all in one sitting. You're going to get the cake unless you don't want the cake. So, up to you to decide if you want the cake. But the High Priestess, Page of Pentacles, I think you do want the cake. And I think that you know what you want. And so I think it's just a matter of deciding how you want to approach what you want. You can do that, like I said, in one sitting, really dig into that, really enjoy that. Or you can just sort of take it carefully, piece by piece. But, it's sort of like the energy is what it is, and it's going to be what it is, and I don't think that there's anything that you're necessarily, like, missing here. And I think that there's specifically an energy of this being meant for you if you want it, and this being good for you if you want it. I guess maybe this is magic cake that's also healthy and never goes bad. The metaphor is getting a little convoluted there, so I'll leave it at that. But I think that, like, even, like, reading this energy a second time and seeing how it's shifted and changed and interacted, as, I guess, at least for me as, like, a reader, like, more positive confirmation that this does feel like it's on the right track. This does feel like a positive thing. This does feel like a good thing. So if you're in the situation of, experiencing this, noticing this, enjoying this, yeah, I would I would let yourself, let them eat cake. Not that I'm trying to Marie Antoinette you, but yeah, about all I have to say there. But best of luck and hope you enjoy this.